My name is Mike Merrigan. I am the Reflections Memory Care Director for the residents at Silver Square. We are an assisted living facility right here in Dover, right up by the new Rotary at the end of Silver Street. There's our Dunkin' Donuts and CVS, and we're up there. My colleague Audra is here joining us as well today. She's our sales and marketing person. I am, as I said, the memory care director for the residents at Silver Square. I'm a board certified dementia educator through the National Institute of Dementia Education. Our topic today is a walk in their shoes. It's something that LCB, our company, put this presentation together for folks in the community, for our own associates, to be able to talk with folks about the experience of having dementia and also give some people an idea of what it's like to try to make it through the day with some of the deficits that come along with having dementia. Certainly, I said we'll have time for questions at the end. We will. As we go through, if you have questions about what I'm talking about, just let me know and let's address that right then and there. Because I want this to be a dialogue between all of us. People come to these sorts of sessions for a lot of reasons. Some of you may be caring for somebody with dementia. Maybe that's something you've done in the past. Maybe you have dementia yourself. Maybe you are somebody that has a history of dementia in your family. Maybe you're just here to learn. All of it's okay. So as we go through, everybody will have their own sort of areas of interest and concerns, and that's great because that makes for a better conversation. So please, if you have questions for me, feel free to let me know. So I want to give you a little bit of background about our program itself. So LCB, our Walk in Their Shoes Dementia Education Simulation, it was designed by our team based on what we know about the experience, the physical experience of having dementia. We offered it originally just to our associates and our family members as a means of education, but we really decided that the thing to do was branch out into the community, because I use the word caregiver interchangeably, really to mean anybody in that whole big network of caring for somebody with dementia. So I am talking about nurses, but I'm talking about wives and husbands and grandchildren. I'm talking about the chef in my building that prepares delicious food, right? We are all caregivers in some capacity. And so we really realized that being a part of the Dover community, we are very good at what we do in our own community, but this is our community. And so we wanted to make sure that we were offering it out to folks who may not have had a lot of experience with dementia. For myself, I deal with folks that have a dementia diagnosis every day. So things that are very typical or usual to me can seem very foreign or scary to somebody who's never experienced caring for somebody with dementia before. So we wanted to bring all of that to you. Now, the presentation today, it is a simulation, so it is going to be looking for a little audience participation. So I'm hoping I can get a few people to come up and join me for this. Otherwise, it might be a real short meeting. So we're going to do that as well as I talk a little bit about it. But I want to talk a little bit more broadly. Can everybody hear me okay? My wife never tells me I'm not loud enough. So I want to talk a little bit more broadly about some of the numbers and Alzheimer's and related dementias. So as you can see up here, we have our meeting here, and that's going to be a thing. So let's just move you over here. Great. So by the year 2050, the number of people age 65 and older with Alzheimer's disease is projected to reach 12.7 million. Right now, there's about 5.5 million people in the United States diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. So we are getting ready to see a real significant jump in the number of folks that have an Alzheimer's diagnosis. Can anybody take a guess as to why that might be? Yeah, right. We have a generation of folks that are moving into that age range where they're at a higher risk, right? That's 65 plus. We have a lot of people that are making their way to that stage of life. About 1 in 9 people age 65 and older has Alzheimer's dementia. That's kind of an intense number to hear. Worldwide, as I said, 55 million people right now are living with Alzheimer's and related dementias. This is a big thing. This is something that a lot of us are experiencing, and if we haven't yet, we're going to. Some important things to know. So what is dementia, right? I'm talking about Alzheimer's, I'm talking about dementia. Anybody want to take a guess, maybe show of hands, if you can tell me if dementia is a disease? Who thinks dementia is a disease? Who thinks dementia is not a disease? Great. So this is an important distinction. Dementia itself is not a disease. Dementia is an umbrella term to describe all of the different things that can cause progressive memory loss. So Alzheimer's disease is the most common one that we think of, but there's also vascular dementia. There is Parkinson's dementia, all of these different diseases that cause progressive memory loss. In kind of in the same way where you might say, I'm sick, right? But that could mean I have the flu or a stomach bug or a headache or all those different things. I'm sick, but then the specifics are there, right? So it basically, dementia is describing a whole group of similar symptoms that equal progressive memory loss. So someone with dementia will rely more on sensory and nonverbal communication, which is geared toward the amygdala. The amygdala is the emotional part of our brain, right? Not to get too sciencey on you, but the two parts of our brain we generally think about are the hippocampus, which is the part of our brain that is in charge of logic and fact and reason. And then the amygdala is the emotional part of our brain where we process things like music. So somebody with dementia, most of the damage done through the process of dementia is done to that logic and fact and reason, right? Which is why it's hard to do things like balance a checkbook, remember phone numbers, what's my address, those sorts of things. And as the disease progresses, those executive things like getting dressed, tying your shoes. But somebody with dementia, because of the emotional part of our brain, will still be able to sing a favorite song, recognize a favorite tune, look at those old pictures from when we were younger and know who those people are to us, right? Some of those kind of things. So we're talking about connecting with people emotionally. That is the primary way that we want to try and connect with folks that have dementia. 60 to 80% of people with dementia also have depression. I'll say that again. 60 to 80% of people with dementia also have depression. That's a big number, right? We can imagine why that might be. There's an awful lot going on through the process of dementia that is hard to deal with. There are also physical changes in the body that can contribute to that sort of thing. The loss of vision, right? As we lose our vision and sort of the plaque that builds over our eyes, we get less light into our eyes. We all know light, right? Seasonal affective disorder. That light is one of those things that helps ward off depression. So as we have less light input, we're more prone to things like depression on top of that. So there's a lot of complicating factors. There's a lot going on emotionally, socially, and physically for the person that's living with dementia. The other thing that's important to know, currently, there are no medications that can prevent or slow down dementia, only mask those signs and symptoms. Now, there are some promising things on the horizon. We're not really here to talk about that stuff, but we are hopeful that in some ensuing years, maybe we'll see some changes in that. But currently, there are no medications that can truly prevent or slow down the process of dementia, only mask those signs and symptoms. In the same way that when you are sick and you have a fever, you take Tylenol, that fever breaks, but you're still sick, right? You still have whatever disease, whatever virus is the flu, right? Maybe you've dealt with that fever, but you still have the flu. It's the same way with some of the medications that we use to treat those signs and symptoms. As you can imagine, somebody with dementia may have some anxiety, right? So there are medications that can help with that person's anxiety as a result of their dementia, but it's not really going to do anything to reverse that dementia. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely, please.
The thing you said about the eyes, is it the same plaque in the brain as in the eyes?
No, not necessarily, but no, it's not. But as you think about, losing our vision through the process of aging,
yeah,
right? That macular degeneration that comes with advanced age, we don't see as well. We're not taking that light in. So people that are in
Alzheimer's doesn't cause it.
No, not necessarily. No, but it is. But it is one of those things that is. It's not. Yeah, and so one of the things that we'll do in part of our presentation today is experience a little bit of that limited vision. Some of those challenges that come with the loss of vision through that process. That's a good question. Thanks. So some food for thought. I talked about some of those numbers, those big numbers. Will we be prepared for the influx of Alzheimer's and dementia diagnosis to come. Talked about all of those big things. Maybe just by a quick show of hands. You're all here for a reason, I assume. Who is here today because you know somebody, personally care for somebody that has dementia in some form? Is that all of us, pretty much? Yeah. So this is touching all of our lives, right? So the question is, what do we do, right? So we have to think a little bit about us as caregivers, right? We want to think about the stress on us because, as I said, we are all caregivers, but without any guidance, caregivers will often wait until crisis occurs, resulting in costly, unnecessarily hospitalizations, emergency room visits, unnecessary placement in geriatric psychiatric units, or a long-term care facility. What that means is we are seeing people waiting longer and longer to get assistance. We wait until the house is on fire and then call the fire department instead of putting in the smoke detectors and all of those things early, right? What happens far too often is that folks wait until something has happened. We know that somebody we care about is struggling with dementia, but we say, well, you know, they haven't wandered off yet, or they haven't had an accident, they haven't had a fall. But often we wait until that happens and then start looking for help. And by then it's awful late, right? So one of the things that we talk about is making sure that we're being a little bit proactive and finding out about what resources are available to us. Caregiver burnout is real. Is there anybody here that identifies as a caregiver for somebody living with dementia? I am. Anybody else? Yeah, so some of us, but again, when you really stop and think about it, if we're not now, we're probably going to be at some point. That caregiver burnout is real. 38% of family caregivers of people with Alzheimer's have physical symptoms of stress, and 59% report very high emotional stress. The University of Pittsburgh did a study some years back where they studied spouses where one had a dementia diagnosis and the other was the spouse caring for that person. 60% of the time, the spouse without the diagnosis passed away first because those caregivers, us as caregivers, put the care of that loved one above everything else, right? We miss our own doctor's appointments. We, skip out on our own day at the gym. We skip out on that walk that we need. We don't go out for dinner with our friends because we're caring for that person. We burn ourselves right out. Right? The example that I use is like the oxygen mask on the plane. What do they tell you? If the oxygen masks come down on the plane, what do? Put your own on first before you help the person next to you. Because if you pass out on the plane, you can't help that person next to you. It's the same for us as caregivers. If we're not remembering that taking care of ourselves is a vital part of caring for somebody with dementia, then we are going to burn ourselves out and then we're not going to be there for them. What does it mean for healthcare professionals, these rising numbers, right? The aging population, as I said, is staying home longer due to that rising cost of healthcare and senior living. We'll see a significant rise in first responders calls related to Alzheimer's and other related dementias. Due to the lack of Alzheimer's and dementia support and education available, there is a risk of individuals unnecessarily being hospitalized or in the GPU because of their diagnosis. So good on all of you for being here today, for getting a little bit of information, for continuing, maybe even starting that process of educating yourself about what it is to have dementia and live with dementia. There's going to be a higher patient with dementia to healthcare professional ratio, right? So as those numbers of people living with dementia increase, the number of available caregivers is not keeping pace with that. Okay, that's a real challenge for us. I'm sure all of you have heard about the challenges, the staffing challenges everybody's having in every industry, right? Everybody, every single healthcare organization that there is right now, this is a real challenge for folks, is thinking about that staffing piece of things, because we know more folks are going to be coming for us and we need to do everything we can to keep pace with those caregiving needs. It's something we are all working diligently on. So we talked a little bit about understanding the need for dementia education because it's all going to be touching our lives. Let's get started with some actual dementia facts. Some things I want all of you to know. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to do some things. I have some different things up here. I'm going to have hopefully a few of you come up and join me up here. And we're going to simulate a little bit of what it feels like to have some of the impairments that come with dementia. I have these gloves and these bands that we're going to put on, right? So when we put on these gloves, and we have some little rubber bands, we're going to kind of tie some fingers together so that our hands don't work as well as they usually do, right? We're going to be simulating those dexterity challenges for folks with dementia, right? Which might be arthritis, all of those different things. So people have a hard time with utensils. They have a hard time buttoning shirts, using zippers, putting on a belt, finding small objects because their hands aren't working as well. Those fine motor skills are compromised. All very real things that, yep, please.
Are you saying dementia causes the loss of fine motor skills?
Yes, yep. As that brain continues to go through the process of dementia, from sort of those early stages through that process, the brain is no longer operating the body correctly anymore. So we start to have all of these sensory deprivations, and that's what we're going to be doing here. So what we're going to do is we're going to try, and I'm going to sort of show you what it's like to try and navigate the world when your hands aren't working the way that you're used to. So, and a tip for folks, and I like to always do this. I'm big on so what, right? We're going to talk about it. We'll go through these things, but I'm going to give you some tips along the way. If this sounds like something that maybe, somebody is experiencing or may experience. So when we talk about people who are having difficulty with their dexterity, right? Assist with putting on clothing or performing those activities of daily living, brushing teeth, shaving, that kind of thing, in a dignified way to prevent frustration that can lead to agitation, right? So use music, put some, when we're having frustrations with doing simple everyday things, find ways to make it relaxing. Put on a favorite song. Like I said, that emotional part of the brain that processes music is still very healthy. So putting on that, Patsy Cline, whatever mom's favorite song was from when she was young, put that on when you do those things. Create a calming, relaxing atmosphere so that, you can help that person without kind of leading to that frustration, because that's going to be a challenge. Using hand under hand, sometimes kind of priming that action for somebody. So maybe the person has a difficult time holding a toothbrush and brushing their teeth. But if you put that toothbrush in your hand and you put your hand under theirs and help them kind of get that action going, those fine motor skills will kick in and they'll be able to brush a little bit, those sorts of things. So we'll experience that dexterity challenge when we get up here. Our sunglasses, I'm preparing you for how cool these are, right? I have these sunglasses we're all going to put on. What they are, we have a little bit of sort of some glue and some paint over these things that is going to simulate, they're not just dark, but they're actually going to simulate what it's like to have some limited vision on the, peripheral vision, spotty vision, that kind of thing. So when you put these on, you're not really going to be able to see nearly as well. Helps kind of simulate what it's like for somebody with that very limited vision, right? So we're talking about, again, decreased peripheral vision, direct vision, difficulty seeing color contrast, right? So if you have a difficult time seeing color and you're trying to eat mashed potatoes on a white plate, you might have a hard time finding where your potatoes end and your plate starts, right? Those kind of things. And then, of course, that general darkening everyday eyesight. 75% of people over the age of 65 have some kind of visual impairment. 60 to 80% of people living with dementia are challenged with depression, as I said. That lack of light and clarity can be a contributing factor. So our glasses are going to help simulate that for you, what that's like. My tips, right? This is why we always want to approach somebody with dementia from the front, because that peripheral vision is compromised often, right? So if I am walking up behind one of my residents in my neighborhood, I don't want to kind of come up behind them the way I might with you and put an arm around their shoulder and go, how are you doing? Because they don't know I'm there. It's going to be scary. So we want to do the best we can to approach somebody with plenty of opportunity to see us coming and recognize us for who we are so that we're not frightening people, right? We want to pay attention to floor transitions, dark rugs, dark colored furniture. So for somebody with that limited vision and compromised cognition, if you have a black area rug on the floor, what might that look like to you?
A hole.
A hole. Yeah, might look like a hole. What do you do when there's a hole in front of you? You stop, right? So now we're just not moving anymore. Or you might try and go around, which might not be the safest path. You might try to step over it, which is probably for somebody with compromised vision, maybe not the best way to get around, right? So there's a lot of those different things. So those colors, those dark colors, even for us in my community as part of our uniform, my caregivers wear tan colored pants. Because for somebody with dementia, if they were wearing black pants, it could look like a floating torso coming to talk to you because they can't see this well, right? That can be scary. So it's also important to recognize those color contrasts. Like I said, toilet seats. Sometimes for somebody, you know, having a toilet seat that's a different color than the toilet helps them find where they need to sit. And plates, placemats, all those kind of things, like I said, to assist with eating. Our nose clamps. I promised we were going to look cool. We're going to get there. I have these nose clamps. We're going to try that. We'll put these on. What do our nose clamps do for us? So our nose clamps simulate difficult breathing due to aging of the lungs, as well as narrowing of the nasal passages, right? As we age, we have a difficult time with that nice full breath because our lungs are aging. So our brain is about 2% of our body mass, but it uses about 25% of our oxygen, right? Our brains consume a lot of oxygen. And when you think really hard or you begin to panic, our brain uses 50% of our oxygen. So if we think about the person with dementia, how might that affect somebody with dementia? Somebody who's using a lot of oxygen, right? If we think about that, so if that's somebody that's not getting a good full breath to begin with, and their brain is working overtime because things like panic or, you know, that brain having to constantly interpret their world, right? I know that this is the drink that I brought today. But for somebody who may not remember that, when they have this thing, now their brain is working overtime to go, what is this, right? Their brain is just working constantly. One of the ways I love to use the example is, have you ever been at the grocery store and you bump into somebody that goes, hi, it's nice to see you. And you have no idea who that person is? You ever do that, right? Is that not like the longest minute and a half of your life? Because what are you doing in that moment? You're going, okay. And now your brain is flying to figure out, who is this person? How do I know them? Don't act weird. Please be nice, right? All that stuff. You're trying to present like you know what's going on while trying to figure out desperately what it is in that social moment. And that's maybe 60, 90 seconds. Imagine your brain interpreting the world like that all the time. It's exhausting, right? So that's one of those things. Our brain is using all that extra oxygen. Our older folks have less oxygen to use. So our nose clamps are going to simulate that for us today. So some of those tips. We're going to encourage nose breathing instead of mouth breathing. That good breath in, right? To really get that good full breath. We want to incorporate deep breathing into a daily routine. Does anybody need to sometimes just take a deep breath to like relax or something? You know, you've had a day and you just need to go, I do all the time, right? By incorporating that with some intention into our day, it's healthy for us, into the person that we're caring for or that we're caring about, to just say, hey, let's start every day with a couple of nice deep breaths. Or before we get up from the couch, let's do a couple of nice deep breaths before we walk into the kitchen, whatever that is. But being mindful of getting that good oxygen is healthy for our folks that maybe not, might not be getting all that full breath that we really need for that healthy brain. And we want to work to keep our residents or our loved ones calm rather than rationalizing or problem solving. We want to find ways to make the world relaxing. One of the things that I always tell people is for folks with memory loss, it is very tempting to try and correct them. It's very tempting to try and just remind them, right? Because we do that all the time. It works with you and I who might not have dementia, right? You know, Audra might be able to tell me that, no, we had that meeting. Remember, it was last week, you were wearing that blue sweater. And I'll go, oh, right. I can recall those kind of things. But that kind of stuff doesn't work with our folks who truly don't remember. I don't know anybody that's ever won an argument with dementia. Hasn't happened. I've been doing this a long time. I haven't won an argument with dementia yet. The best thing you can do is meet people where they are. So if somebody says, you never brought me my coffee this morning, you know what? Maybe I didn't. Let me go get you another one. Instead of that, yes, I did. Don't you remember? I brought it right after, you know, we watched the news, then I brought you your coffee, right? That's just going to create that conflict. That's hard, folks. That takes practice. It's not easy. You're not going to get it right all the time, and that's okay too, right? So that's a part of it. But we want to work to kind of keep folks calm. Our headphones, these guys over here, we're going to pop these on. I'm going to put these on for you. One, kind of muffling. I probably just got louder. I can't hear anything right now. So this is going to sort of block out some sound, but I'm also going to introduce some background noise. I'm going to connect with my iPad and have a little bit of audio distraction as well. Because, so what that's going to do, it's going to decrease in we have a decrease in our reception and cognitive challenges related to language, right? We don't hear as well, so we can't hear instruction as well. Or we may have a hard time filtering out the noise that's meant for us and the noise that isn't, right? Are you talking to me? Or are you just talking? I don't know, so I'm going to react to everybody, right? That kind of stuff. Filtering out that noise. So I'm going to kind of give you the experience of too much of that audio sensory input with our headphones, right? So a person with mid-stage dementia will drop approximately 1 out of every 4 words that we speak. Somebody with later dementia will drop 2 to 3 out of every 4 words that we speak. So what that means is when we're speaking to somebody, it's important to simplify what we're saying, use less words. What we know is that the words at the beginning and the end of a sentence tend to have more impact than all those words in the middle. So if I'm, for example, asking somebody with dementia to brush their teeth, I don't want to say to them, we're going to go to the bathroom and I'm going to get the toothbrush out of the cabinet and we're going to brush your teeth real quick and then rinse and then we'll go. That's too much. But what I might say is, it's time to brush your teeth. We're going to go to the bathroom. It's time to brush your teeth. Time to brush your teeth. Those 2 things, right? I'm not baby talking. I'm just using more concise, simple language, right? It's time to brush your teeth because those first and last words are more impactful. So we have to be careful about not offering too much information at once for somebody that's struggling with their memory. And you're going to experience that a little bit too with some of the directions that I give you. So some tips along the way, right? As I said, being mindful of the way you're communicating, keeping those outside noises to a minimum, reducing distraction as much as you can. You know, if you're having a conversation with somebody that is experiencing memory loss, maybe just go ahead and turn that television off so that they can focus on you and not kind of the TV and you and all of those things. We want to reduce those distractions. Like I said, we want to keep our commands simple, just a couple words here. Like I said, body language matters a lot, right? We want to communicate directly. Eye contact is important so that, you know we really have somebody's attention, and not standing over somebody. So I'm not a little guy. And so with my residents, some of who are very small, maybe seated in a wheelchair, if I were to come and sort of loom over them, it can be a little intimidating, right? So what I'll often do is just make sure I back off a little bit and maybe just come down and just kind of eye to eye and really kind of put myself in a position where I'm not so intimidating over somebody to let them know you're safe, right? So sometimes that helps as well, being mindful of that body language and that physical distance. The kernels, this is the fun one. So I have some popcorn kernels here that we are going to, I'm going to take some of these kernels and put them in our shoes. Has anybody done this before? So our kernels, right? What those are going to do, the popcorn kernels in your shoes, simulating arthritis and neuropathy in the feet, which is, of course, common for a lot of older folks, right? Up to 80% of people over 65 are living with some form of arthritis. Also neuropathy due to compromised blood flow to the feet, diabetes, those sorts of things, right? So folks that can't feel their feet well or have pain in their feet may have that compromised gait, right? So they're not walking necessarily as smooth or as stable. It can be a distraction. Your feet hurt, right? Anybody ever have a pebble in your shoe? How long do you put up with that? All day? 2 steps max, and then you fix that problem. Imagine for a second if you couldn't fix that problem, or couldn't fix that problem for yourself, or communicate to somebody else that you felt that way. We're going to kind of experience a little bit of that too, right? Cueing somebody to move their feet a little bit before they stand can help. Kind of get your sea legs, right? You've been sitting down for a little while, legs are tired, your feet, you don't have that good blood flow. Sometimes before we get up and try and walk across the room, it's good to just kind of move those feet a little bit and kind of get that, get the wiggles out, right? Before we get up and walk away. So we'll do that as well.